From 1941 to 1945, one armored vehicle was used far beyond its original design. As the war on the Eastern Front intensified, it appeared in frozen steppes, shattered cities, and dense forests, adapting year by year under increasingly tight restrictions. This is the story of how the StuG III was used across the Eastern Front, what it was capable of, where it fell short, and what its service reveals about the harsh realities of war. The early StuG III embodied General von Manstein's concept of assault artillery, designed to provide armored direct-fire support to the infantry. Organized into independent battalions of 18 vehicles, these early StuGs acted more like mobile pillboxes than breakthrough tanks. Armed with a short-barreled 75mm gun, they specialized in close-range high-explosive fire against bunkers and fortified positions. With up to 50mm of frontal armor, they proved largely immune to Soviet light anti-tank weapons. Operation Barbarossa in 1941 exposed the StuG to a new role when the formidable T-34 and KV-1 tanks appeared. The low-velocity guns struggled against their sloped armor, making standard armor-piercing rounds almost useless. Despite these limitations, StuGs became one of the infantry's last credible defenses against Soviet armor, especially when compared to the ineffective 50mm guns of the Panzer III. At just under 2 meters tall, the StuG's low silhouette was a major survival advantage on the open steppe. It could exploit shallow terrain, ruins, and ridgelines to stay concealed at long ranges. However, its casemate design, lacking a turret, meant the entire front of the vehicle had to face its target to fire, increasing the risk during engagement. Communications were a critical weakness. In 1941, StuG radios were incompatible with Panzer networks, and the infantry they supported often had no radios at all. Coordination relied on runners, hand signals, and flares. Manstein's insistence on an infantry-controlled assault gun created lasting institutional divides between the armor and artillery branches. Manned by artillerymen but visually distinct in their field gray Panzer uniforms, StuG units forged a unique, elite identity during the war. In 1942, the StuG underwent a decisive transformation with the introduction of the F model and the Hivala 75mm StuG IV gun. For the first time, the platform could reliably defeat T-34 and KV-1 armor at medium range. However, the powerful gun introduced recoil and balance issues, making the vehicle nose-heavy and accelerating wear on the front suspension. As German forces shifted to a crisis-driven defense, StuG units became the Wehrmacht's Mobile Fire Brigade. Independent battalions were rushed at threatened sectors to halt Soviet breakthroughs. The low silhouette and powerful long gun enabled effective ambush tactics from concealed positions. Industrial realities also elevated the StuG's importance. Its turretless design eliminated complex machining, reducing production time and cost. The StuG cost roughly 20% less than a Panzer IV, allowing for higher output under growing resource constraints. The AUSFF model received an additional 30mm frontal plate, boosting protection to 80mm. The later FA8 version refined the hull construction and improved overall ruggedness. These upgrades significantly improved survivability against Soviet 76.2mm guns, especially in urban fighting. Despite its new tank-killing role, the StuG retained its artillery identity and doctrine, training, and uniform. Crews emphasized precision gunnery and ambush tactics rather than maneuver. By late 1942, infantry no longer saw the StuG as mere bunker-busting support, but as their primary shield against massed Soviet armor. Standardized throughout 1943, the StuG III, a USFG, represented the mature form of the design. Its most important upgrade was the armored commander's cupola, which finally provided protected 360-degree vision comparable to a turreted tank. Production focused on reliability, and the sturdy welded mantlet was maintained throughout the war. At the Battle of Kursk, the StuG's strengths were on full display, contrasting sharply with newer German tanks. While Panthers suffered catastrophic mechanical failures, StuG units demonstrated exceptional reliability, often fighting until their ammunition was exhausted. Tactically, StuGs operated as de facto tank destroyers, frequently paired with Stu-H-42s for combined anti-armor and high-explosive fire. The addition of Shozan, or side skirts, addressed the threat from widespread Soviet 14.5mm anti-tank rifles, which could penetrate the StuG's thin side armor. Acting as standoff protection, these skirts significantly improve survivability against infantry ambushes. Though fragile and often torn away by terrain, even partial coverage reduced losses. The StuG's new periscopic sight also enabled concealed observation from a hull-down position, supporting the ambush tactic central to its success. However, firing still required exposing much of the frontal armor due to the low-mounted gun. By late 1943, StuG units were credited with destroying more Soviet tanks than the panzer divisions themselves. Reliable, economical, and lethal, the StuG III had become the primary anti-tank defense of the Eastern Front, respected by its crews and feared by its opponents. The StuG had evolved into the Wehrmacht's indispensable defensive backbone. In 1944, the StuG III fully adopted an ambush-focused defensive doctrine. Crews practiced firing a single shot before rapidly relocating. As Germany retreated on all fronts, the StuG served as the primary tool for delaying actions, buying time for withdrawing infantry. Facing increasingly powerful enemy guns, some crews resorted to adding field-expedient concrete armor to the superstructure. While psychologically reassuring, this added weight provided little real protection and further worsened mechanical strain. Factory upgrades instead focused on infantry defense, including a coaxial machine gun. By late 1944, StuGs were being formally integrated into panzer divisions to replace missing tanks. In many sectors, they became the only armored vehicles available, forcing them into offensive and maneuver roles unsuited to their turretless design. Urban combat magnified the StuG's limitations. Without a turret, it struggled against threats from multiple directions and depended heavily on infantry protection. A close-in, all-around anti-infantry weapon was intended to provide some, but shortages meant many vehicles lacked this system entirely. Survival still relied on tight coordination with infantry screens to counter close-range attacks. BT's point StuG units were fighting a losing war of attrition. They remained lethal on the defense and achieved favorable kill ratios, but industrial problems made losses irreplaceable. Cannibalization of damaged vehicles became standard practice just to keep a few units operational. The StuG arm, once the Wehrmacht's backbone, began to fracture under relentless enemy offensives and material exhaustion. By 1945, the veteran core of the assault artillery was largely gone. Replacement crews received minimal training and lacked the intuitive gunnery skills that were once central to the StuG's effectiveness. Poor coordination between poorly trained gunners and drivers crippled mobility in combat. Once detected, inexperienced crews often struggled and overstressed the final drives while trying to reposition. German logistics had effectively collapsed by early 1945. Fuel shortages, broken rail lines, and the absence of recovery vehicles meant even minor breakdowns doomed to more vehicles were lost to abandonment and demolition during retreats than to direct enemy fire. In the ruins of Germany's eastern cities, StuGs often fought without effective infantry screens. Volkssturm units lacked the training and coordination needed, leaving the turretless assault guns exposed to flanking attacks. Late-war upgrades like coaxial machine guns, roof-mounted weapons, and commanders' cupolas were inconsistently available or undermined by shortages. The final StuGs emerged from the bomb-ravaged Alkit factory in Berlin, where repair and assembly continued from dwindling part stocks, even as Soviet forces overran the city. These last vehicles were crewed by stragglers and mechanics, fighting briefly in the Borsegwald and Tegel districts. They represented the final gasp of Germany's armored industry. Despite its bitter end, the StuG III achieved unmatched efficiency. Although wartime claims of 20,000 tank kills are debatable, the StuG's cost-effectiveness is undisputed. Its successful design went on to influence post-war vehicles like the Cannon Jagdpanzer and Sweden's radical STRV 103. Thank you for watching. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you in our next video.